What is up, everybody? Welcome to a very special episode of Shoot the Gap, the IDP Fantasy Football Podcast here at Fantasy and Frames. I'm your host, Jorge Edwards. We got JT, as always. And joining us tonight, the godfather of IDP himself, Mr. at IDP Sharks, Gary Davenport. We're going to talk about NFL free agency. We're going to talk about it from a fantasy perspective, who we like, who we don't like, what we're indifferent about, all that. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back after this. So, Gary, it's been a long time. We haven't seen each other since during the season, and you and I have not been in close quarters with each other since the Fantasy Football Expo. How has your off season, if you want to call it an off season, because we all know there's no real off season in fantasy football or in football in general, how has this, faux, off season been treating you so far?
Well, I'm trying to finish up a move, need to sell a house, trying to set up a new office. So there is no, I'll sleep when I'm dead, I guess. I guess. I say I guess, because I don't even know if I get to sleep then. I'll wind up a specter haunting some rando bedroom across town for no reason.
I mean, that is the way to approach it. So, yeah. Gotta love that. JT, man, how are you doing tonight and this week and all that jazz?
Well, I'm doing all right. Having all kinds of computer issues cost us a show tonight already, but I finally got it up and running. I'm not sure what was going on. My computer did not like me not being in my office. As you can tell, I'm on the road here. So it was a little bit of an issue. Crazy weather here in Illinois, thunderstorms, possible tornadoes. I don't know if you've watched that new tornado documentary on Netflix about Joplin, Missouri, but I watched that today and freaked myself out about the tornadoes today. So, usually I don't get too worried about it, but now I'm a little scared. So right now we're good. Hopefully, we don't have any issues. But if for some reason I just go out in the middle of the show, you'll understand something's going on.
That's like watching Passenger 57 while you're on an airplane. Don't do that.
I know. It wasn't a great idea. I wouldn't recommend it. I should have waited at least watch until they were long gone before I take a watch on that. But yeah, so definitely freaked myself out on that one.
Upside, Jorge, if a tornado comes in and scoops JT up and takes him away to Oz, this will be your highest rated show ever because it'll get watched on YouTube. Like, man gets sucked into tornado in Missouri.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll have to change the title and work with all the hashtags and. But is this for children? No. Put the rating not for children on there. I'm sure it'll get plenty of views here. We got Brandon in the chat. We're talking about the Browns, sneaky Browns. Steve, IDP, Hunter over on Twitter. I have come here to chew bubble gum and talk IDP, and I'm all out of bubble gum. Love it.
First time I've ever heard that.
That's good. It's good though, right? That's a very. I like that.
And then he says something nice about me. Makes me feel bad about busting on him. Nothing but love, Steve. Nothing but love. I'll see you in August.
Steve, there's only one legend on this screen, and you're talking to Gary Davenport. I am far from that, but
no,
appreciate the love there. Man, Gary, there's been some stuff happening, in the defensive world of the NFL and how it can impact fantasy football. You know what I mean? A lot of moves on both sides. Like people who are getting the better of the deal, whether it's a trade or a re-signing or a free agent signing. People are coming and going. You want to just get into some players that we just have written down and just give your opinions on that, and we can just go around the frames and talk about that. Does that work for you?
Have at it. The frames. See, I get it. Fantasy and frames. Clever.
Which, by the way, I love the picture of FIF in the background. You being a family member here at Fantasy and Frames, we just love it.
Represent.
That's right. Let's eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Let's talk about a linebacker who I actually put a IDP article out on Fantasy and Frames today. Zach Bond. Let's talk about him getting re-signed by the Philadelphia Eagles. I believe it was like a 3-year, $51 million deal, if memory serves me correctly. I I'm excited about this for fantasy football purposes from a redraft perspective, just because Nakobe Dean's injury, that torn patella tendon, that happened late in the season. Do you remember when I fell down the stairs and I tore a similar tendon that was, in the knee, and I was like, I couldn't make the expo, and walking was hard and bending the knee was hard. Yeah. So take that, but like to a more extreme case with a, more in shape person. And that's what he's dealing with. And there's talk that he may even miss all of 2025. And so when I'm thinking about stability at the linebacker position here for Philadelphia, I mean, no other linebacker outside of Nakobe Dean and Zach Bond have really showed out for fantasy purposes. And so this kind of brings some stability, especially for the Eagles in real football and for fantasy managers, wouldn't you think?
Bond is one of the wilder stories, and I've been doing this a while, that I can remember. To go from, this little used quasi-edge rusher guy, special teams dude in New Orleans to, okay, he gets to Philadelphia, and Vic Fangio looks at him and says, no, you're an off-ball guy. And then for him to blow up with the season that he had, of course, the best case scenario was for him to go back to Philadelphia. For a lot of the, if a guy just put up top 5 IDP numbers, the best case scenario is for him to go right back to the situation he was in. So now, like you said, you're talking about the Dean injury. There's no reason to think Bond won't be a solid LB1 again. If there's a downside, it's that you're going to have to pay for that. I mean, the people who fell into Zach Bond last year at the end of drafts or even off the waiver wire early in the season, that's a jackpot guy. That's a league winner. You're not getting that discount this year. No, he's top shelf now. Before he was like under the bar, he was the stuff when you have like just a pocket full of change, they give it to you. Now he's like Crevassier and whatnot.
The ladies' man, so to speak, going back to SNL days. JT, let me ask you a question from a dynasty perspective for IDP Dynasty. For redraft, I think it makes sense if you want to go heavy, if you want to invest in top linebackers, like you're going to have to, like Gary was just saying, pay up for the value of Zach Bond. But for dynasty, is he somebody for your IDP roster at the linebacker position that you feel comfortable with just after one season of production, kind of making him being the centerpiece of your IDP roster? Or do you need to see more consistency, especially if they bring in another alpha linebacker to help that linebacking core in Philadelphia?
Yeah, I mean, I like the fact that he went back to the Eagles. If he went somewhere else, I would be very nervous about making him the centerpiece of my IDP team, just not knowing what I was going to get with him on a new team. I think going back to the Eagles, you think hopefully solidifies him in that he's going to stay in the same role. The question is going to be is who's going to be next to him. Like you said, with that Dean injury, do they go out and get somebody new? Do they give a guy like Jeremiah Trier Jr., the rookie, I think he was a 5th-round pick out of Clemson last year. Does he maybe get a first shot at replacing Dean, or do they go out and try to find someone that's a little more experienced and try to put him in there? So that's going to be an interesting thing there. But if I've got Dean, if I got Braun, or I want to go acquire Braun, I feel much better about it knowing that he's back in Philly.
Absolutely. And of course, folks, for those of you who are in the YouTube chat, thank you very much. If you're over on X, head over on YouTube and drop your questions in here for all of us, especially Gary. And if you have any questions on offense, as you all know, the rules here at Shoot the Gap, we talk on air about defense, but JT will do his best to answer all of your other questions in the chat. So we cover everything, but we're selective about how we cover it. So
got standards.
We got standards, damn it. Speaking of standards, let's talk about Cody Barton. Let's start at the top and work our way down. Right? So no longer with the Denver Broncos, goes to Tennessee. It appears now the Kenneth Murray experiment is over for the Tennessee Titans. Cedric Gray is another year away from given that opportunity to start coming out of North Carolina last year. And I was pretty high on Cedric Gray. I wanted to see what he could do. But Cody Barton's there now. And yeah, I mean, he, next to James, somebody who I know very little about right now, according to ESPN's depth chart for the Tennessee Titans, for all intents and purposes, like that's the only linebacker you want, in the redraft for for the Tennessee Titans, and considering the fact that they may not be that good this year, and I guess that's like a Jorge moment, he should see plenty of volume, right, Gary? Or is he still somebody that you? Well, let me put it another way. Would you consider him a value if you addressed maybe edge rusher or a defensive lineman early on in your drafts, and then kind of come back to the linebacker position and say, Cody Barton, he's still available? I'll pick him up on my roster.
As things stand today, yeah. I mean, he was one of the bigger quote-unquote winners among what there really hasn't been a lot of upheaval at linebacker. The bigger names mostly wound up going back to their own teams. There are still some guys who aren't signed yet that could change the dynamic for some teams considerably. Guys like EJ Speed hasn't found a home. Kaiser White hasn't found a home yet. But, yeah, that was pretty much a best-case scenario for Barton's IDP prospects. I think he's going to be a guy that a lot of people are going to talk up as a value as we move into redraft season. And again, the draft could change things too. I mean, if the Titans take a linebacker with first pick in the second round, they get Jahad Campbell, all of a sudden all bets are off.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense. We got a couple of questions.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead. No, go finish your thought. Then we'll jump to the question.
Cody Barton has kind of teased Cody Barton season going back to his time with Seattle. I mean, there was a couple flashes, and then he went to Denver, and everyone's like, no, he's going to be a 3-down starter there, and he's going to blow up. And he teased a little bit, and, now it's on to Tennessee. So I wouldn't pay too much. It all depends on where you can get him. Just don't get too carried away, which people sometimes do when a guy lands in a primo situation. They're like, there's your breakout. It's March. We have no idea who the breakouts are. And to be honest, we don't know in August either.
When we find out after the season's over and
December.
Yeah, comfortably say who they are. Okay, so we got a couple of questions here. We got a roster question from Willpower, Willpower loves seeing you back on programming here at Fantasy and Frames this year. He's like, I have a question. What two would you drop out of the following? TJ Edwards, Diane Henley, Alex Singleton, or Terrell Bernard? Gary, let's start with you.
I think Singleton's an easy cut because he's hurt or coming off a major injury. Oh, man, Henley was on fire, but he's got a lower floor than Edwards and Bernard, but I don't know that I want to lock myself up totally in the old guys. So I'm going to cut Singleton and Edwards by a hair.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned Alex Singleton because we'll get to his situation in a minute. Steve Hungarter also has a question for you. What type of alcohol would Cody Barton be equivalent to? JT, then we'll go to Gary for that answer. JT, JT Brew, come on, what's a good one?
Dude, I compared him in the chat to Jim Beam. I'm a whiskey guy, but I do not like Jim Beam at all.
Jim Beam ain't whiskey.
It's my least favorite whiskey out there. So it's like one of those, like, Barton is a guy, like, I'll take it if I have to have him on my team. Like, if Jim Beam, if that's like the only option, I'll force it down. But man, it's not what I want at all. So I feel like Barton's that guy on your IDB team. It's like, if you got him, you'll take him, but it's like you don't love it. And you're like kind of like disgusted when you have to put him in your lineup, but occasionally he gets the job done, just like Jim Beam.
We got Jamie in the chat saying he's like light beer. Okay,
that's what I was going to say. Busch Light. I was going to. It's not the worst beer you've ever drank in your life, but it wouldn't be your first choice either.
Yeah, he's definitely Busch Light. I think is too kind. I think we're going Natty Light.
Don't you? How dare you besmirch the good name of Natty Light, man?
It served me well in college. You're not wrong.
Yeah, that's the thing. Natty Light has done well by many of us degenerates.
This is very true. Wendy, you're early in the chat. What's up, Wendy? Willpower says flavored water for me. I don't drink alcohol. Fair enough. Okay, flavored water. You know what he is for me? He is the Powerade of energy drinks. We all know that Gatorade reigns supreme when it comes to taste and flavor for energy drinks. Powerade, not the same. Not the same. You do a side-by-side test, it is kind of a letdown. It's kind of a letdown.
89 cents, though.
This is true. This See, always finding value everywhere. Fantasy football drafts, power, you name it. So we were talking about Alex Singleton, and now he has a new running buddy in Denver with Dre Greenlaw. We saw Dre Greenlaw, at the Super Bowl 2 years ago. Coming out of the locker room at halftime, was ready to sprint on the field, and then right there as he started to move, he tore his Achilles. He's out for most of last year. He came back, in a few games down the stretch, but he had to be taken out of the games because he was not himself. He was not right. And in full honesty, he had no business being on that field. The 49ers are already out of it. They should have just kept him, take a mulligan for 2024 and come back stronger. But now he's a couple of years removed from that injury, and he goes to goes to the Denver Broncos. You mentioned cutting Singleton in the chat. Question we just have: do you think these two guys can coexist? I know Josie Jewell was there next to Alex Singleton. Josie Jewell was not Alex Singleton from a fantasy production standpoint or a real football production standpoint, but he was serviceable as an IDP flex or an LB3. Do you see more of a 1 and 1A for Greenlaw and Singleton, or are you just out on Alex Singleton because he's coming back from the ACL?
I kind of feel the same way about Singleton and Greenlaw. I mean, we've seen both be incredibly productive. I mean, Singleton just off the charts productive from an IDP perspective. I think Greenlaw, from an NFL perspective, is a better linebacker, and I don't know that anyone's really going to argue that with me. The problem is, Singleton's coming off, I believe, an ACL. Greenlaw is he's much farther removed from the Achilles, but when he played last year, he clearly wasn't right. And when they shut him down, it wasn't his Achilles. I believe it was knee soreness. Mm-hmm. And he's a guy who has had I think he's played every game in the season one time his rookie year. So we might see a little bit of 1 and 1A, but I feel like it's a situation where probably one of those two guys is going to get hurt and the other one's going to clean up. But ask me definitively which one's going to be which, I don't know, which is why I wouldn't overpay for either. And I fear people will with Greenlaw because they'll see that contract and they'll think, well, the Broncos must know something, right? I mean, they gave him all this money, so he's going to do well. He might. I mean, on a per game basis, Greenlaw, excellent linebacker, was underrated for several years playing in Fred Warner's shadow. But I don't trust either one of them from a redraft perspective that much as things stand right now. Now, if he's at every practice of OTAs and running around and looks 100%, then my perspective might change. But right now, the last time I saw Greenlaw, he was hobbling off the field again.
JT, would you consider Greenlaw and Singleton both buy low candidates at this point, pre-NFL draft for your dynasty leagues, or are you just not even there?
I'm low on them. If they fall in a draft, I'd grab them, but they're guys that are not high on as far as guys I want to be shooting after. The one that's real interesting to me is, what does this mean for Drew Sanders? Is Drew Sanders going to get a shot this year, or is Drew Sanders IDP gone for good? Because he was kind of that, okay, is he an inside off-ball linebacker? Is he going to play edge? Are they going to move him around? You weren't quite sure, and then now they look like they're pretty set with Benito and Cooper on the outside. So you think if he's going to get playing time, it probably means he's more playing off-ball in the middle. I'm interested to see what he does in camp over this summer and see if with injury, if he's the guy that ends up being the guy that steps in and plays more. So I've got my eye on Sanders, but again, I'm just looking at it. Maybe he's a guy that might be useful, but I'm not 100% sure I want any of these guys, to tell you the truth.
No, that's a fair point. Let's head over to the newest edition of the Los Angeles Rams, former Atlanta Falcon, Nate Landman. Caden Ellis came over from the New Orleans Saints. He had a couple good seasons there, and then he became a free agent. He came over to Atlanta, and it was basically the Caden Ellis show at the linebacker position for the Atlanta Falcons. And Nate Landman, I believe, was dealing with some injuries last year, and we didn't really see him up to par. And we were always thinking about, is it going to be Anderson? Is it going to be Landman? Neither. It's Caden Ellis, right? But he goes to the Los Angeles Rams, and he's like, technically playing next to Omar Speights. But we all know that the Rams utilize basically one linebacker in the center of the field playing the majority of snaps. So, with that being the case, what are your thoughts on Nate Landman for redraft purposes, Gary?
I tend to lean Landman over Spates. I mean, this such an impact signing by the Rams. They had Bobby Wagner for a year, but other than that, the last time they had a decent inside lineman, it's been a long time. It's all Troy Reeder and Christian Roseboom, and then Roseboom leaves and goes gets a check.
Yeah,
I mean, someone's got to make tackles in LA, and I expect Landman, if he can stay healthy, to emerge from that competition with Spates as the top linebacker. I haven't seen anything from the Rams to indicate that they really trust Spates, including them going out and getting Landman. So, I mean, there could be some value there if he stays under the radar, which we should probably, if we're going to do, if we want him to do that, we should probably shut up and stop talking about him. So I don't even know who Nate Landman is. I don't know who you're talking about. The Rams are in Los Angeles? I thought they was in St. Louis.
Yeah, ask Nate Markham that question since we're talking about Nate's here. I'm sure he'll give you a lovely soliloquy about how he loves the fact that the Rams are in Los Angeles now. JT, what are your thoughts on this Landman situation here? Is this somebody that you consider a value, or is this somebody that you're just like, maybe if I like want an LB4 or LB5 situation on your team?
I like Landman. It was a little bit of a crowded mess there in Atlanta with him and Ellis and Anderson, like who was going to play. When Landman played, he was good. Now I think he's a lot better than Roseboom. And Roseboom was pretty good for IDP purposes as far as value, how cheap you were able to get him and what he actually gave you production wise. I think Landman in LA makes a lot of sense. You hope for draft purposes, you could get him for a good price, because I don't know if he'll be a sexy name that people are really thinking about on their radar, especially with him moving to the Rams. But I really like this spot, especially if I'm waiting on linebacker and I'm not going in really early and spending high draft capital on off-ball linebacker. This is a guy that I think you could get for a really nice price and still get pretty good IDP production. I've gone on quite a few Dynasty leagues, and I actually really like this move. Because I was going into the year like, if he's on back on the Falcons, is he even going to start? Is he going to be playable for IDP? I love him in LA. I think you should expect the Roseboom floor of what he had for IDP last year, and then better, because I think Landman's a better player.
Stop talking about Roseboom. He went to Carolina and could clean up again.
We may or may not be getting there, but let's go back to Atlanta now. And Steve's in the chat here, and he says, is there a support group for folks who draft Troy Anderson? Well, now what do we do with Troy Anderson? Does his value kind of go up, or is he kind of been relegated to waiver wire pickup of the week because it's still the Caden Ellis show, and he didn't exactly have the best of years last year. Granted, he didn't play a lot of games last year due to injury, but let's start with JT this time. What are your thoughts on Troy Anderson?
So I would probably be leading the support group. I love Troy Anderson, and I've got him everywhere. It's like we're just waiting. He's one of those guys we've just been waiting for to say like, hey man, when is this guy going to finally break out? Because I love the ability. I mean, pride of Montana State. I mean, the guy is an absolute stud if he stays healthy. The problem is he just hasn't been able to stay healthy. He to me, if you're like me and you're someone who is into him and has always been a fan of his, this might be the year, because a lot of people are probably finally off. They're like, I'm not going to subject myself to another year of Troy Anderson getting hurt and not playing. I like him a ton. I think if you could get him, he's going to be – Caden Ellis is definitely going to go higher. There's going to be people higher on him. I like Troy Anderson. You know what? Screw it. I'm in for one more year. I'm in for another year. I'm jumping on the Troy Anderson train. I'm hoping this is the year that it takes off and goes berserk. I'm in. If the Falcons go early at linebacker in the draft is where I'm going to freak out. That's if they somehow like go John Campbell or something in the first round, I'm going to be pulling my hair out and be like, Troy Anderson's dead. He's officially dead. But I like Troy Anderson. If they go linebacker, I hope he goes somewhere else. But, man, I'm giving it one more season.
Can you give him just Gary?
JT hit on it. It's what happens between now and the end of April. I mean, do the Falcons take a linebacker in round 1 or round 2? There are still some free agent guys who could seriously shake up some depth charts between now and then. Right now, yeah, is LB2 and a defense that if you can get him, I mean, I'm guessing in redrafts he'll probably go in LB4 territory. Yeah, I'll roll those guys. Why not?
No, that's a good point. We were talking about the Rams there, and Gary, you dropped the name Christian Roseboom goes from the Rams to Carolina, paired with Josie Jewell. I like this tandem. This is a sneaky tandem where I think both people can actually find some success. We saw Josie Jewell play next to Alex Singleton those years in Denver and be able to carve out a role for fantasy managers. And now he's bringing in Christian Roseboom, who's no Alex Singleton, but given the opportunities that I think they're going to find themselves on the field a lot, meaning the defense, this could be something. This could be something. Gary, are you? I sense negativity when it comes to Christian Roseboom, but for fantasy purposes, what does his signing in Carolina mean to you?
Yes, from an NFL perspective, Christian Roseboom is a guy. I mean, he's not. There are half a dozen linebackers who still haven't signed yet that if I was an NFL coach, I would rather have him than Christian Roseboom. But the Panthers apparently they had to do something to address the run defense. They allowed 180 yards a game on the ground last year and apparently didn't want to spend much money. And they run a lot of 2 linebacker sets. So if these are the guys, if Roseboom and Jewell are the guys going into week 1, then I think both have the potential to be excellent IDP values, even after Jewell put up solid numbers when he was healthy last year. But it's another team where much could change, and it depends on how the draft plays out. So, landing spots. I was waiting to see which linebacker would land with Carolina. I just had kind of hoped it would be someone who was better than Roseboom because it's a great spot in theory.
In theory, JT, you agree with that assessment there?
Yeah, I think this might be the spot, like Gary said, IDP purposes. Man, both guys can be great. For real life Carolina Panthers fans, I don't feel great about this defense if these are my 2 linebackers. But I think they could be good for fantasy. I mean, you look at, when healthy last year, Josie Jewell was 13.9 points per game in his 12 games. As far as fantasy pro scoring, Roseboom was 11-2 a game. So, a lot of assisted tackles, not a ton of solos, 69 solos to 64 assists, but he got you 11.2 points a game. Yeah, I think he could get that in Carolina. I think he could match those numbers. And again, if you're getting Roseboom, you're probably getting him pretty late. I don't think you have to draft him even remotely as early even as Josie Jewell. So I think you can get him, especially in redraft, for a pretty nice price. And you shouldn't get, unless they go something crazy or, Trevin Wallace absolutely blows up in camp and steals one of these jobs, which could happen. If both these guys are on the field to start the year, I think you're going to look and get pretty good IDP value for them.
Speaking of IDP value, we talked about earlier Zach Bond and his ascension into IDP glory after one season with the Philadelphia Eagles last year. And he had a freaking phenomenal season last year. But somebody who also had a great season that kind of came out of nowhere was Jamian Sherwood. He got re-upped by the Jets, and they let go of C.J. Mosley, meaning the New York Jets. Do we have as much faith in Jamian Sherwood being somebody who can repeat the NFL performance and the fantasy performance as we are confident in Zach Bond, or is there a difference between the two, Gary?
Oh, that's an excellent question, actually. I don't know that there's really a difference between the two, but for whatever reason, I think I trust Bond a little bit more, if only because I don't think he's going to have a Quincy Williams next to him, who could potentially be that guy who, is half a step faster and gets that tackle. Sherwood was great last year. I was happy to see him get his bag. And frankly, from an IDP perspective, I think the best case scenario, again, was staying put with the Jets, because that Jets defense might be on the field a fair amount this year. So I haven't, oh my God. I mean, it's hard enough for me to do dynasty rankings right now because the draft hadn't even happened yet. So I haven't even sniffed redraft. I'll probably have Bond ahead of Sherwood, but I don't see how you can leave Sherwood out of the top, 12, 15 guys. And that's probably where he'll get drafted this year.
You like Jamin Sherwood there for Dynasty there, JT?
I'm not 100% sold on Sherwood. He had a good year last year, and I think he's going to be solid. I'd rather take Quincy Williams, honestly. If I can get him cheaper, I'd rather have Quincy Williams, personally. But I think Sherwood's solid. I don't know. I almost felt like last year he was so pushing to make sure he was playing so well because he was trying to stay ahead of Mosley. And now that Mosley's gone and he doesn't have that pressure, I wonder if he slightly regresses this year, to be honest with you. I do think this defense is going to be on the field a lot, though. So I think you're right. I think he's going to have a shot to get a decent amount of tackles. But for me personally, if I could, I would go Quincy Williams, especially if I get Quincy Williams a couple rounds later than Sherwood, if people are kind of on him because of the big breakout last year and the re-signing.
Speaking of re-signings, another New York Jet linebacker that I think we can all be salivating over for fantasy football purposes, a Mr. Jamin Davis got signed by the. I'm kidding. We're not talking about Jamin Davis on the show ever.
You just did talk about Jamin Davis on this show. Are you bitter? Are you bitter, Jorge? Are you just a little bitter? What round did the Commanders draft him in again?
First round. Ron Rivera picking his Luke Kuechly equivalent, which backyard.
You went 12-5 last year, made the NFC Championship game. Jesus, enjoy yourself a little bit. Damn. It's not like it used to be. You don't have to be bitter and jaded like me. Now you're in happy land. You've gone into happy land. I'm still stuck in downtown miserable. You get to be happy.
I was happy. I was very happy during the season. I was happy with the playoff performances. But as a Commanders fan, it's one of those things where it's like I've seen them have really good year, really good year, and then the following year it kind of falls apart, and it's then it's back to the same old. I need to see it again as a bitter Commanders fan.
Dan Snyder is not popping out from behind some curtain like the worst WWE promo ever. He's got a steel chair. No, you're good, man. He's gone.
Can you imagine the equivalent of Dan Snyder getting to be an owner of another NFL team? I feel like that's the equivalent of a steel chair coming out at the owners' meeting. But I digress. Let's talk about a linebacking situation that I gotta be honest with you. When I saw it, I was a little put off by it. But then I remembered Bill Belichick's not the head coach of the New England Patriots anymore. And that's Robert Spillane leaving the Las Vegas Raiders and going to New England. My initial thought, granted, I know Vrabel's the head coach now, things are, supposedly different now. But my initial thought was like, man, that New England Patriots were, off-ball linebackers go to die, because who has ever been successful from a fantasy perspective? And I get it. Bill Belichick's not the guy anymore, but who is the guy? One of his disciples, And are they going to start, doing things a little bit differently than what Belichick did? Probably what Vrabel was doing in Tennessee all those years. But man, Gary, you got to help me out with this one. What the hell do we do with Robert Spillane? He had such a good year, such a good past 2 years.
I'm gonna let somebody else draft him based off what he did last year and what he did the year before that. I know that Bill Belichick ain't the head coach in New England anymore. There's been one top 10 linebacker come out of New England in the last decade as Jamie Collins. There have been two in the last 15 years. Again, the second one was Jamie Collins. And those were years where he had big play numbers that helped his so-so tackle production. I know Vrabel ain't, but he's a Belichick guy, same as Mayo was a Belichick guy. I don't know why the Patriots keep thinking they have to the Patriot way or what. That time is over. They should have hit the reset button and gotten someone to just change the whole culture of the organization. Because Mayo and Vrabel, for all the success he has had, and he's a Buckeye, so I got nothing but love for him. They're not Bill Belichick. So, no. I think people are going to chase Spillane's 2024 numbers, and I believe they are going to be disappointed.
JT, what do we do about Jack Gibbons? Leaving the Tennessee Titans, going to the New England Patriots. Also, Gibbons had some performances last year due to injury at the linebacking position, but again, somebody who showed flashes, right next to Cedric Gray, and it's like now he's being relegated back to very, very deep on the depth chart. I think the people that are ahead of him are Christian Ellis, Jelani Tavai. Is Tavai? Yeah, Tavai's still there. Jelani Bentley, all these people. And it's like poor Jack Gibbons is like the very bottom. He's like the fourth string linebacker.
Hey, there ain't a linebacker on that team that can cover worth a damn. Sorry.
Yeah, I just think this is a mess for all these guys. I think I like Spillane the best out of all these guys, but you're going to have to pay too much for him. He's going to go higher than I would want to spend draft capital on him. And then if you've got, like me, in Dynasty, I've got Jawan Bentley and Jelani Tavai in a couple spots, deeper leagues where you've got to basically anybody that's a starting off-ball linebacker you have to have on your lineup. Like, because there's no one out there on the free agent waiver wire list. Man, all those guys now just become like, so difficult to roster because you're just like, what are they going to actually do? And then if they do have good games, how often is that going to be? And can you actually count on it when you put them in your lineup? That Bentley, Tavai, and Gibbons, I think they're just going to drive owners nuts all year. I really do. I think if they're in your lineup or on your roster, I think you're going to be like looking every week going, is this the week that he has a good game and I play him, or do I take the chance, or is there somebody else? Because that was Tavai all year last year, and Bentley too, before he got hurt. I mean, you're like, I played him in a lot of spots because I was a little bit desperate, but it was like every week was like, I hope he gives me something. Which you never want to go in there where you're hoping your guy gives you something. That's a bad spot to be in for fantasy, and that's where I feel like you're going to be at with all those guys this year.
Come play in buckets, brother. We will show you a whole new level of desperation.
I'm sure. I am totally sure.
Well, let me tell you somebody who I will not be worried about drafting in Butkus if given the opportunity. It's the man. It's Bobby Wagner re-signing with the Commanders.
You got to throw this in there.
Yeah, damn right I'm going to throw it in there. Perks of being the host of the show, and I love it just because I think he played like almost every single snap last year. Frankie Louvu was asked to rush the passer on occasion, more than on occasion, pretty frequently in games. So it's not like you have two standing off-ball linebackers. Louvu kind of playing that Parsons role where they're lining up on edge or lining up, off-ball. So Bobby Wagner, another year older, doesn't matter. The guy is. He is like the Curtis Martin of linebackers. The guy just keeps going and going and going no matter how old he gets.
He'll probably bump down a couple spots in my rankings, but with him and Levante David, I mean, again, sometimes the best case is just not go anywhere. And it would have been so weird to see Levante David, and it's already weird to see Wagner in a Commander's uniform, which I'm putting him on the wall in my office, but it's going to be in a Seahawks uni because when he goes into the Hall of Fame, assuming he makes the Hall of Fame, which I think both Bobby Wagner and Levante David are Hall of Fame linebackers, it'll be as a Seahawk.
I have where am I going here? There's my Bobby Wagner Seahawks jersey. Coincidentally, Nate Markham gave me a Dick Butkus jersey to hang up on the wall here. I know, right? So maybe a little repping the Butkus division, over the course of the year going forward.
Autograph photo right over here. Plus, I finally took that flag that I got the first year that we drafted to Michaels and had it professionally framed, which, oh my God, that's expensive.
Yeah.
But I got 70% off. No, I didn't get 70% off a damn thing. They just jacked the price 70% and then said, you're saving money.
It's like, no,
Screw you, crap boy.
Speaking of screwing you, speaking of the screw you comment here, that's what I was saying to screw you injuries. Screw you world, cruel injury world. Because somebody for the Las Vegas Raiders, kind of switching to a different position here on the field, Malcolm Kuntz, he gets re-signed by the Vegas Raiders. He had an injury last year. I believe it was like a shoulder injury that he had in the beginning of training camp, and it just kind of lingered on. And then next thing you know, week 2, it's like, he's out for the season. And you go back to previous year, him and Max Crosby were playing very, very well. I got a lot of Malcolm Kuntz in early drafts. I think I got Malcolm Kuntz in the Butkus draft. Like I'm like thinking I'm hot shit. I'm like, okay, I'm going to get value on Malcolm Kuntz later. And 2 weeks into the season, bye-bye goes the value. But if he can come back and that shoulder injury is right, I think, with Max Crosby just demanding, so much attention, Malcolm Kuntz is in a good spot to really, kind of eat up and get those one-on-one opportunities. And when he's been given those opportunities, he's had a pretty good win rate, versus his offensive lineman counterparts. So it's like a quiet move, but one that I'm kind of digging. Anybody have any comments on Malcolm Kuntz, or not so much, or maybe?
It's hard to fault any team that signs a guy to a prove-it deal. And we've seen quite a few of them on the edge. We saw it with Kuntz in Vegas. We saw it with Hassan Reddick in Tampa Bay, who's a guy that I think, before last year's holdout / catastrophe with the New York Jets, Hassan Reddick had at least 11 sacks 4 years in a row. That's not easy to do. Dante Fowler going to Dallas, playing opposite Micah Parsons, another pass rusher who generally keeps opposing offenses occupied. If there's one prove-it deal I'm not nuts about, it's probably Leonard Floyd to Atlanta. And I keep having to look Leonard Floyd's stats up because I keep being surprised that he's had at least 8.5 sacks in 5 straight seasons. And it just seems like we never talk about Leonard Floyd. But Atlanta is where pass rushers go to die. And, I mean, we saw Matt Judon. Where did Matt Judon go? Is he even still alive?
He is unsigned at the moment.
Because he was invisible last year for a team that, for whatever reason, cannot rush the quarterback at all, and decided to get rid of their best defensive tackle because why not, man? He makes a lot of money. We got to pay Kirk Cousins to be the backup.
I actually was getting kind of high. Wow, I should rephrase that really a lot. Jorge was getting kind of high, just a little. Just kind of high. He wasn't high. He was just kind of high.
Full
blown high, exactly. Arnold Ebiketie. I know that's a deep cut, but we're diving deep into the pool. It's a deep dive, yeah. But yeah, no, I agree with you where they go to die, and they need some serious help. I remember a couple of years ago during the Jalen Carter fiasco where he went to Philadelphia and not Atlanta. Our own Keith Fleming went on a 6-minute rant about just how stupid the Atlanta Falcons were for passing on a generational talent like Jalen Carter. It is probably on our YouTube channel the highest watched YouTube short we have to this day. It has like over 1,000 views. It is literally the hottest piece of content we have, and he got very animated. So if you're over on YouTube, definitely check out Keith's YouTube short there.
Meanwhile, the Eagles blew. Bryce Huff blew last year. He sucked. That signing looks like a disaster. They lose Brandon Graham and Josh Sweat, and they just start eagling again, just loading up on pass rushers like crazy. Yeah, we'll take that one and that guy. And hey, want to come play for the defending Super Bowl champions? Yeah, we'll take him too. Because apparently they don't have a salary cap in Philadelphia.
Salary what? No,
I know. It's a myth.
It is a myth. It's like they just convert all the money to guaranteed money, and that's how they get away with the per year average. I mean, I did see yesterday that they signed Azeez Ojulari, who in games. That's not a horrible signing. I actually think that's a good signing.
Azeez Ojulari is terrible against the run, or at least was in New York. but I don't know how many sacks he had last year, but his sack to snap ratio was excellent. And that's what I'm saying. That's what Philly does. They just load up on these guys and keep rotating them and rotating them and rotating them. And, maybe I'm lower on Josh Sweat than I should be because he didn't play as many snaps as some edge rushers do because the Eagles rotate so much. But yeah, I love the Ojulari. Who else did they sign? They signed someone else just a couple of days ago. Another edge rusher.
Josh Uche from
for like less than $2 million.
Yep.
That's ridiculous. I mean, yes, he hadn't been good the last 2 years. We're talking about someone who had an 11.5 sack season, and had an 11.5 sack season that all 11.5 sacks came between week 8 and week 16 that year, and they got him for less than $2 million. That's how you win.
Howie Roseman is the Theo Epstein of I think Howie Roseman goes beyond Theo Epstein, using a baseball analogy here. Just one of the shrewdest, best general managers you can find out there.
And even he got he didn't get fired. He got demoted for Chip Kelly.
Right. Well, that was wow.
It happened. It happened.
Let's get to a defensive back, Gary's favorite position when it comes to high value picks on them. I know. I'm just kidding. Gary is all about finding value at the defensive back position, as a lot of people are. Totally get it. JT and I, we are connoisseurs of the defensive back position because we have won fantasy titles with our rosters having defensive backs, especially those that creep up to the line of scrimmage. Cameron Bynum, JT, this is for you. Minnesota Viking. We saw Josh Metellus play closer to the line of scrimmage last year, and Cameron Bynum kind of moved further out to free safety. He goes now to the Indianapolis Colts. We know Nick Cross there is kind of like the box safety, or was last year, and Julian Blackman was asked again to go drop back in coverage. Julian Blackman is now not on the Colts. They bring in Cameron Bynum. What are your thoughts on Cameron Bynum from a fantasy perspective for Indianapolis?
Yeah, Bynum's an interesting one just because what they did Minnesota. Now, as far as what the Colts need, it was a great signing for the Colts. They absolutely needed a free safety, and they needed one bad. It was just a bad position for them last year, even though I did like Justin Blackman. But I thought Blackman was much better when he was playing that box safety role that kind of Cross ended up taking over for him. So Bynum's going to be interesting because he was a guy that can move around a lot. And the Colts did move Cross some into that deep safety sometimes too. So he wasn't purely in the box all the time. So it'll be interesting to see what they kind of do with Bynum there. He's one of those rare guys, though, but because he was such a big playmaker that as a free safety, he was actually playable in IDP leagues, which, often you don't want those free safeties whatsoever because those guys just are not going to put up big stats for you. He's a guy I'm going to keep an eye on because I want to see how the Colts use him in this defense, because it'll be interesting if he ends up being like just straight the deep safety all the time. Probably going to lower him in my rankings, or someone that I want to get. I think he's a really great player and great signing for the Colts. I just need to see what they're going to do with him and how they're going to use him. Because Nick Cross, while he improved last year, he was great for IDP purposes. I don't know if that's going to be the same way they use him all year this next year, because he had a huge tackle board, but they also didn't want their strong safety making as many tackles as he actually did. So it's going to be interesting to kind of see how he works there. But Bynum's one of the few guys, and I know there's one or two more guys on that free agent signing list that possibly will bring up, kind of like a Javon Holland too, that some of those guys that actually gave you some production, even though they did play mostly deep safety.
Bynum for me is going to be all about when I can get him. Because, his tackle numbers last year weren't terrible. Yes, he didn't have 137 tackles again. The safeties don't generally have two straight 135 tackle seasons. But he still had 94 stops, despite playing, like you said, a different role where he was farther off the line of scrimmage a lot more. I expect that's where he's going to play in Indianapolis, because I don't think you want Nick Cross deep. Like you said, the Colts had two box safeties last year. So whoever they put deep was going to get exposed, and it wound up being Blackman, which makes me think that Cross is that much worse deep. So you don't want that guy back there. That's why you gave Cameron Bynum, what was it, $17 million a season. But if I can get him, late, because there are going to be IDP managers who, it happens every year, especially at defensive back. They drafted Bynum as a top 15 defensive back because he had 137 tackles, and they got all mad because they only had 94. So he's on their do not draft list. I get outside the top 20-ish defensive backs, and I start looking at that list, which you know me, Jorge, that's generally when I start looking to draft a defensive back. I might roll the dice on him, if only because to me, defensive backs are disposable anyway. So if I'm not getting tackle production 3 weeks into the season, I will punt him for some scrub safety we never heard of who has 35 tackles through 3 weeks.
You had me right before you said scrub defensive backs. That's just harsh. Let's talk about a
Jonathan Owens a couple years ago in Houston.
He played well.
No one had any idea who the hell Jonathan Owens was. And then he had like 40 tackles in the first month of the season, and everyone went crazy over him. And by the end of the year, he's back on the bench because he's not that good.
He was good for your IDP teams.
Absolutely. That's what I love about defensive backs. If I can get them for 5 cents, then great. And when they stop being worth 5 cents, bye, Felicia.
I should have a drop that says bye, Felicia. That's hilarious. You know who said bye to the Raiders? Trayvon Moore goes to Carolina. Played a majority of the snaps in the box last year. Go over to the good old folks at PFF when it comes to playing against the run. He is their defensive back, safety, 7 overall. Again, we saw Moore, when he was drafted by the Raiders, play many years, out in coverage at free safety. Last year, they put him at, closer to the line of scrimmage, and he flourished. Now going to Carolina, I feel like there was like Von Bell, right? Von Bell and then Xavier Woods, and like who's the answer there? Neither of them. Okay, we'll bring on Trayvon Moore, and we'll just keep cycling through these safeties, and eventually one is going to hit pay dirt, for a 3-week stretch, and then all of a sudden it's like somebody else. And, does this move for you, Gary, for Moore going to Carolina, give you optimism or pessimism for his fantasy value going forward?
Well, it's a great day to be Trayvon Moore. Again, he was another guy who got more money than I expected. Linebackers are hardly getting anything this year in free agency, and safeties are landing fat deals. What do they plan to use with? Because if he's going to be the box safety for the Carolina Panthers is going to be worth a lot in IDP leagues. Again, that's a team that gave up almost 180 yards per game on the ground last year, and their linebackers are Josie Jewell and Christian Rosastinks. So there's going to be value with that box safety. The question is it going to be Moorick, or are they going to, because Moorick has shown versatility. He's played deep safety. He's played box safety. He's even played some slot in Vegas. So are they going to keep him off the line of scrimmage? And I don't even want to say his name because I'm going to jinx myself by doing it. Damani Richardson showed some flashes down the stretch last year. So I just forget I said his name. These aren't the droids you're looking for. But if you ask me what the price tag I expect them to be in drafts, if I'd rather have Moore or Richardson, I'm going to be drafting Richardson in the 30th round of a lot of the drafts.
What are your thoughts on Trayvon Moore going to Carolina there, JT?
I think Gary's right. I think if he ends up being the box safety full time, whoever is that guy for Carolina is going to put up a ton of tackle numbers. I just think they're going to put up a ton of tackle because I think they're going to be asked to help those linebackers who are not great out a lot. So I think he's going to be really good. And to be honest with you, him leaving the Raiders puts Jeremy Chin in a great spot because Jeremy Chin is another one. The Raiders, now that Spillane's gone,
he has risen.
Who is playing linebacker for them? They just signed Alonzo Roberts. Like, who legit is going to be the tackling machine for the Raiders? It might be just Jeremy Chin might have 160 tackles. Like, it could be interesting this year for him. So I think Moorick is a guy, if he ends up definitely being the strong safety, the box guy, I want him. And same thing for Chin. I think whoever ends up being the box safety for the Raiders makes 1,000,000 tackles.
He got me with Landon Roberts. I ain't gonna lie. I'm like, oh yeah, he's the best linebacker the Raiders have.
I mean, really, like
Yes.
I like
Well,
Roberts as a player, just the toughness. But like, if he's your top linebacker, like
you're
your
in trouble.
Going to be in trouble. Like your safety is going to make 1,000,000 tackles.
You're gonna wish you had Christian Roseboom.
I agree.
Wow. I'm gonna bring a shirt to the Fantasy Football Expo and say Gary is Christian Roseboom's #1 fan, and we'll see if he can.
Oh, that's fine. Post it on Twitter. I don't know. He would be the first player to yell at me and tell me I suck. Whatever.
Let's
right
round out
back
the
at
show.
you, partner.
That's what you should say on the back of the shirt. Let's get to one last player before we get out of here tonight. We got Fourth and Frames coming up next. The return of Fourth and Frames.
Oh, look at the witty titles. Look at y'all.
All
creative and whatnot.
Shoot the cap, that makes sense from a defensive perspective. Exactly.
See, I knew I put that picture on my wall for a reason. This is you got a tight ship going on here. The SS Jorge.
There's some planning that goes on. You're not wrong.
It's like one big booze cruise. We're all just sailing.
But like good booze, not Jim Beam on the cruise ship.
That's right.
Hey,
right.
You know what? Drink some Canadian Mist and you'll learn to appreciate Jim Beam.
That is a true statement. So that Canadian Mist, I would not want to be on the Canadian man. That's got to be a horrible hangover.
I don't know. I never drank that much of it to find out enough of it to find just one shot, and I'd be like, lighter fluid tastes better than that.
All right, our last player to talk about for tonight, former safety for the San Francisco 49ers, also a 49er going to Denver, Talanoa Hufanga, lining up next to Brandon Jones. And we saw, again, Hufanga have more success from a fantasy standpoint playing, again, shocker, closer to the line of scrimmage for the 49ers. But now he's playing next to Brandon Jones, who I don't see him ceding too many box snaps at strong safety, seeing as how he was probably in the top 15 or top 12 in points per game for your fantasy leagues at the defensive back position last year. Like, Brandon Jones is a beast. He will, this move really concerns me for Hufanga's, fantasy value going forward. Maybe in like big play leagues where you're getting, 5 points or 6 points for an INT and like 3 for a pass deflection or something like that. Maybe he starts to show some value, but for me, it's the Brandon Jones show in Denver for the safety position or defensive back position there. Gary, what are your thoughts on Hufanga going to Denver?
I tend to share your concerns. I think you hit the nail right on the head, given what Brandon Jones did as Denver's box safety last year on one of the best defenses in the NFL. I don't see why you fix something that isn't broken by switching him to deep safety when Hufanga has shown that he can play deep safety and when healthy has shown a nose for the football. So, yeah, I would expect. Now, it's also possible that we could see like a left safety, right safety alignment and that might be the worst case scenario because then you got both guys losing box snaps depending on what the alignment is. But again, with defensive backs, it's all about the price point. And given Hufanga's injury history, if I can get him as DB 28, DB 30, then I'm not really risking anything. So
right.
It's all going to be one of the maybe the most interesting safety situation to watch in the NFL as we move into OTAs and camp, what they have planned for those two safeties. Because both of them can play both positions. It's just Jones had the best season of a career last year. And even in Miami, he was better as a box guy than a deep guy.
Yep, absolutely. All right, folks, so that's going to do it for Shoot the Gap. We got Fourth and Frames coming up next. Before we get out of here, we always go around the frames and just ask everybody, what the heck are you doing? And whether it's in the world of football, fantasy, or just things you just are doing around the house or going out and doing for your social life. What are you doing, Gary? What are things that you're doing that you're enjoying right now?
Working. What else?
Okay, that's a good one. That's always a good one.
Working, putting my office together. Football is a machine, man, and I'm just a cog.
but a very well-respected cog. So that's something to be said there.
By some people.
JT, man, what's going on with you? What do you got going on for going forward?
Well, for this week, it's NCAA March Madness, baby. I love the tourney, man. I love Thursday, Friday, sitting around watching all the games. Perfect time in my basement with my 4 TVs to get every game going at the same time. So I will be spending probably the next 4 days as much as humanly possible in my basement watching all the tourney games this weekend. This is one of my favorite weekends of the year. Absolutely love it. Kids are on spring break, so we don't got a lot else going on. So I just get to hang out, watch games. So I'll be doing that, and I'll probably be updating my rankings, my IDP rankings, and doing some of that stuff as I'm sitting there. So again, check those out on DLF. I got those, but going through my rookie rankings, updating some of those as well as my Devi rankings. So a lot of brackets to fill out the rest of the night, boys. I got a lot of ones I got to get turned in before everything gets going in the morning.
I had to mention the tournament, so then I got to turn the Ohio State light off. Now I'm sad. See?
Ohio State, man, just didn't quite have enough to get in this year. I thought they were going to possibly get in, but I'm glad
they didn't. I'm glad they didn't take the bid in whatever nonsense tournament they're running out there, the Crown Royal or whatever the hell it is. Just no. If you don't make it's 68 teams. If you can't make 68 teams, just go home. It's time to go home.
Yep, exactly. As for me, I will be updating my rankings also at fantasyandframes.com. Look for some free agent signing articles and the fantasy football relevant impact that these moves have made. As for me, you talked about earlier in the show, I was not going to say anything about getting high to my bosses, but if my bosses are watching, I will be streaming the tournament come noon tomorrow afternoon at my work computer. So just be prepared for the bandwidth to kind of go down just a slight smidge. But they're fans too, so it's I don't think they're going to be too angry. Stay tuned for next week, folks. We are going to be talking about the results of a 4-round Dynasty IDP rookie mock draft that we'll be putting on and announcing on Twitter over the course of the next couple days. We're going to do the draft, and then we're going to actually look at the results of the draft, notice any trends that are happening at this point, as we're getting closer and closer to the NFL draft, and trying to see where the value is. If you've missed our breakdown of rookie prospects at defensive lineman, defensive back, and linebacker, we finished that series last week. JT and I, we just basically were on every night last week, and we covered all those. You can check it out wherever you listen to podcasts. Just subscribe to the Shoot the Gap podcast, or go to our YouTube channel and check out those episodes there. Gary, man, as always, it is a blast talking to the Godfather and getting your blessing here. We got to have you on pretty soon. And again, it's always a pleasure seeing you at the Fantasy Football Expo.
Oh, anytime, Jorge. You know that.
I appreciate it. And JT, you know what? Have fun, man. This tournament is going to be a lot of fun, and I hope you're going to have a lot of fun this weekend, especially with the spring break and the kids and all that jazz. So have fun there. And for me, we will see you both next week. See you all next week. And Jorge can talk, so he's getting off air now. And we'll see you all later. Peace out.